Hello, Janine.
Hi,
Wonderful to see you again. And
too. Yep.
I'm so happy that we have time together to go deep into how regeneration health and saber science align. And what we wanted to look at today is Saber's testing, unique testing methodologies, and as well as how to test at home so that those clients that are coming on board have the background of what makes us so special and how we can bring that into the comfort of their own home.
Yep. Make it as easy as possible.
Great. I'm going to give you the floor and let's talk about the SABR methodologies that your lab goes through and what is unique about them and, why it is the best
Yeah.
test.
Yeah. Well, with SABR, we started in research as a lab. We've done research for universities, for private studies, white papers, and of course, we've used different equipment, different methodologies. What that means in the lab is the type of machine and materials you use to identify what you want to test and how you measure that. So when you go see your doctor and they're going to order a blood test, sometimes on your lab order, behind the name of that test, you'll see an acronym, you'll see certain letters, and that's differentiating the test for the methodology, how the lab is supposed to perform it. Literally, what machine it goes on, and the fluids and materials, what the lab technician is supposed to do with that. And all of that has a dramatic influence on, like, let's say, for example, hormone, how the hormone is identified and measured and then put onto your lab report. You can do the same test, two different methodologies, and have very different results.
Mm, it's really
So
interesting.
with Sabre, what I love is that we not only evolve and improve with technology as things get better, but we are a privately run company, which means we operate with integrity, where we have our own personal strict standards that we want to adhere to. Um, we've done ELISA methodology, we've done other methods, and what we found with certain compounds we were testing, I think it started with the amino acids when we were looking at 5-HTP and serotonin. Um, we saw little blips on the readout that didn't quite make sense. And what we found is that with certain methodologies, something called the isomer or the twin, the identical of that amino acid, wasn't getting separated out. And in other lab methods, if they don't separate that out, it actually just gets lumped into your value, what's reported,
Mm,
which theoretically means your result could be skewed, could be technically higher than it actually is. And so after time, we thought, you know what, let's go different approaches. We tried different approaches, and we ended up going a very expensive, more complicated route. We use LCMS. It's actually a double MS. It's liquid chromatography mass spectrometry, um, and it runs the MS twice. So we're LCMS MS, which means you get an extremely accurate, very specific reading on how it isolates the compound that we want to test. It measures it on mass and time, through movement. And then any anomalies, if it's out of the range, get repeated. So sometimes if your personal lab is taking another few days, usually that means we're repeating the whole process for our own validation.
mm,
Because if it's accurate, you're going to have the same thing each time. That's good sign.
mhm,
Um,
mhm.
yeah, so
So
all of our
you test and then you retest the
Yes, we test and then
specimen.
we retest. And actually, let's kind of back that up a little bit. Before we even begin the testing process, we have certain measures to qualify your sample. We get a
Mm,
lot of people concerned they spent money on this test, they invested, and, they drank coffee they weren't supposed to, or they did something, and will it be okay? And we reassure them that we qualify every sample before we even begin the testing process.
Mm.
So it has to meet certain standards to be a good sample, to be a good saliva
Mhm.
sample or urine
Mhm.
sample. And if
Mhm.
there's any issues, you'll get a call or an email saying, we're sorry, but for your benefit, let's recollect. And most people would rather do that, and know that they have an accurate report in front of them. It matters because I guess we can go into what are you going to use the data for, right? For us,
Mhm.
we are using that information to know how to formulate and prepare a health program, very individualized products. So those numbers have to be as accurate as possible.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're all absolutely individually unique,
Yeah.
and it's just
Why
such a
shouldn't your products be unique just?
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
and a lot of the doctors I'm talking to really appreciate the fact that it's an ongoing test. So the lab also indicates to retest in 6 months or a
Yeah.
year or a year, even 3 months, based on the findings, so we can change the formulations as there is improvement in the test results.
Yeah. If you come to us symptomatic or with a specific goal in mind, then we highly suggest you keep the retest schedule on time. It's usually between 3 and 6 months, because we really need to track the body's going to be making a lot of changes. The
Mhm.
products are made for specific intentions, and once
Mhm.
that's met, we have to adjust them. They have to change with you. They're no longer serving you at that point. Now you're at another level. So we have to catch that and follow that. Um, or if you're coming to us just for curiosity, I feel great. I just need to know, and I want something custom made for me. That's okay too, because then your retest schedule might be pushed back a little bit, maybe just once a year. But then
Mhm.
that way, you know that the product is still appropriate, you know where you stand, and you just have this ideal maintenance system for yourself, so that whatever exposure to pathogen, illness, stress event is not quite as depleting to your
Mhm.
body. Your bounce back factor is a lot
Mhm.
faster. The sleep you're getting is actually reparative to your system. That's a huge thing I see with most of our clients is the quality of sleep. You may sleep through the night. It doesn't mean that sleep's actually working in your favor,
Yeah.
because of background things that go on with our hormones. So yeah, the labs kind of tell the story on all of that. And we've got quite a few different panels that people can choose from. We've got bigger tests and smaller tests. We break up the lab in two categories. We have the saliva hormone. There's different ways you can just do that. And then we have the amino acids, which is done through a single urine collection. And there's different ways you can test that if you want the big scope or, you know, just the moderate. And then we
Mhm.
have the combination where you can get everything reviewed and then
Yeah.
start from there.
Yeah, and even go deeper into the genetics.
And the genetics, yes. The
Yeah.
genetics um, lay nicely into the amino acid testing, because these aminos that we're looking at, they're neurotransmitter metabolites. We can't call them neurotransmitters technically because we're not actually testing brain levels.
Mhm.
Left the brain and we're looking at excretory through the urine. So imagine it's like if I were to capture the exhaust coming from your car, I could
Mhm.
analyze that and tell a little bit about how your engine is performing, right? Same thing with urine. We capture that, we're telling a little bit about how the brain, how the nervous system is performing. And we have very specific instructions on what time of day to collect, um, not to have caffeine or certain things, so that we get a nice average of what your production is. Um, So the genetics play a role here. They are the coenzymes that tell each amino acid in their movement and their metabolism where to go.
Mm,
So when we look at aminos, if one is high or low, sometimes it doesn't mean necessarily that if you're low in 5-HTP, you take 5-HTP. We have to look at what genetics, what enzymes are functioning surrounding that process. What enzymes are needed in there? And we look at, okay, do they have a genetic mutation or a dysfunction somewhere in that genome? Then we know, okay, big picture story here. This may be a lifelong product that the person needs to take versus an acute symptomatic that they're going to bounce back from.
mhm,
So
mhm.
the genetics, yeah, definitely are very effective and can make a difference in that going from the acute to the maintenance to the lifestyle.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and we all know the science of epigenetics is now very accepted in traditional medicine. So,
Yeah, yeah, it's
you know,
becoming mainstream
it's a
medicine.
more it's a more, let's say, more costly route, but you only do the genetics once.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
And the other tests we test ongoingly that are much more reasonably priced. And, you know, that's so it's available.
Yeah, it's there.
When you were talking about the how we do this, I was thinking of the form that is in my kit. So here's the HP4 kit that you would get.
HPA.
And it's a box and it has many things in it. So
Yeah,
it's got
need
it's
presence.
yeah, it's got your client form that you fill out. And just like any health intake, it has all the questions. And that's where you can identify, or the client identifies their goals, their health goals, their current lifestyle practices. And it's developed, you know, very specifically by
Yeah,
your lab to capture the questions that both men and women need to answer. Obviously, it's strictly confidential, and there's a form for women and men, and where you can also list the drugs that you're taking, or those and the supplements and your family history.
yeah.
So it's quite complete and complex.
Yeah, it's very complete. 4-page questionnaire. We have patients send us letters and write, their history, tell us their story. And I'll tell you, Dr. Golda, every single one of those gets read. Every
Mm,
single one. And then usually we'll have a little phone call or discussion on top of that, because sometimes their answers to questions gives us more questions. And
mhm.
being a medical detective in that way really helps to get to effective products. You
Yeah,
know, we
yeah,
you have to be inquisitive and curious and really care about the client if we're going to bring them something that's truly effective. And
yeah.
that's what I mean by a privately run company with integrity. These products are formulated and crafted one by hand with your unique profile in mind.
Yeah. And that's why it takes a couple of weeks to get results,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
that's the level of specificity and detail that the company does for each person. And it's so valuable for the treating physicians to have that backup and to know that they care about their client and the lab cares about the client.
yeah,
I obviously am going to integrate between the doctors and the lab, but together we'll really get the voice of the client
absolutely. Yeah.
and the doctor's knowledge and history and concerns. So we can gather all that information through the intake form and through our inquiry before we do the test.
Mm-hmm.
So they
Yep.
know. And then the other parts in the kit are quite wonderful. We have 2 ice packs,
Yep.
which get sent back
Yep. They
with
get those in the
the
freezer.
UPS
Yep, and then it comes
form.
with that's the shipping envelope. It's a
Yeah,
clinical lab pack, so
yeah,
it won't get rejected. And yeah, you just seal it up, drop it off. It's a UPS lab pack.
yeah. Show and tell time.
Yeah,
So it's a lab pack,
yep.
and you just it gets billed along with the tests. The
Mm-hmm.
shipping is not included, but it is uh paid for by the
Yeah,
client
with the purchase of the test, it's in there.
with the purchase of the
Yep.
test. And then we have the actual saliva test
So
con-
yes. So look how
container
many there are in in that baggie. One, two, three, four, five, six. Uh,
6.
I've seen a lot of laboratories. I don't know of any other one that has six saliva tubes for one test like that. So with those test tubes, we're going to look at all of the hormones. We look at the sex hormones, progesterone, testosterone, and estradiol. And then we look at the cortisol 6 times every 4 hours. And then we look at DHEA sulfate. And let's differentiate that. It's not DHEA, it's DHEA sulfate, which is the most active form of that hormone. So in terms of supplementation, we can get very specific.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and getting that level of specificity throughout the 24 hours, so it's every 4 hours. And even though it's not great to have to wake up at 4 a.m., those test results are very important to understanding how your body is responding
Oh,
to
yeah.
stress. And
Especially for, if you're looking at, you want weight loss, immune improvement, immune system, all of that goes on in the middle of the night. That's when, like I was saying, the quality of your sleep and when your body flushes out toxins and whatnot, growth hormone production.
yeah,
So if you're eating 500 calories and sleeping great and still not losing weight, you might want to look at your cortisol at 4 a.m. and,
yeah.
see what's going on, do a saliva test and get something customized.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's really important. I came up with regeneration.com 24 years ago because I was working with the regenerative metabolic system that
Mm.
is tied to the 24-hour circadian rhythm, and
Mhm.
and really looking at why do we sleep and how does the body regenerate. Exactly what you're saying. If we don't get that healthy sleep, that because the body is flooded with too much
Yeah,
cortisol, which
yeah.
if people don't know, that's the hormone that's secreted along with stress. And if that's flooding the body, then you're in flight or fight or flight
Fight, flight.
mode.
Yeah.
And maybe you want to add to that a little bit about, because we are capturing that, and it's such an important part of understanding our
And
whole nutritional approach.
yeah, and really it's simple. I think all of us know it at our core. Stress dominates. When cortisol is out of balance, that's going to override a lot of other functions that go on in our body. And so you have to manage that. You have to give your body the support, the building blocks, the materials it needs to get back into balance. Otherwise, it just kind of becomes a runaway train.
Yeah. Yeah, and the body doesn't recognize what the good stuff because it's in almost hypervigilance.
Yeah,
It's say, wait, 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 I red alert.
yeah,
I'm not able to shut down. And if you can't rest at those deeper levels, the body doesn't regenerate.
yes. A doctor I was talking to the other day, she says the cells literally are not able to receive because you're just in that flare, in that stress state, that fight flight.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
really does a number on your body. So
Yeah, and
that's why I
it's
say,
biochemical.
yeah.
Everybody talks about stress, the chronic stress syndrome,
Mhm.
and as though it's something outside, but it actually is a physiological response that we're
Yeah.
working with, and all these chemicals that
Very
the
much
body
so.
produces.
And that's why whether you have symptoms or you just want maintenance, it's always a good idea. You know, it's beneficial to all populations, especially I'm a
Definitely.
mom, especially with children, set them up in life early, help them out through puberty, have a much, you know, easier, smoother transition growing up. Um, because all of us, we come into this world and we have certain genetics, and certain things will trigger those genetics. It may not even be stress as we perceive normal stress. It could be just allergies and illness and whatnot,
Environmental. Yep.
environmental, but that takes its toll, right? That creates just work, internal work of the body.
Yep. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I appreciate you bringing that up. Is this is not just for longevity or anti-aging or postmenopausal women or men. It really is for the whole life cycle, and that we have a 28-day test
Mhm.
of the 6 saliva samples throughout the month. So
Yeah.
for women who are dysregulated in their menstruation or trying to get pregnant, et cetera, this test is really valuable.
Yes, yes, you can do a whole month saliva test and track the peaks and the drops in progesterone and estrogen, which is, you know, what creates menstruation to ovulation, and track you throughout the month and really get a sense of where am I in balance? Where am I not in balance? What days of the month do I need support? Is it all the time or just a few days? Get
Hmm.
all of those questions answered. What's going on? How high are my hormones peaking? You just want to know, what am I able to produce at my age? Um, yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's really fantastic. And then the last container in the kit is our urine sample. And this is really where we look at the amino acids. And we do this at 10 a.m. in the morning. And then we package it up with the ice and we send it off. Maybe you
Yeah.
want to talk a little bit about what we look at in the
So,
urine sample.
yeah, that tube, just so you know, if people are doing this, it does have a small, a very tiny bit of preservative in there. So if you're doing this test and you see a little drop or it looks
Yeah.
like precipitation in there, that is supposed to be in there. If you make a mistake, do not wash and reuse that tube. We will send you another one.
Oh, good.
That
Good to know.
preservative
Thank
is part of what keeps it stable. And like I was saying, we qualify all the samples before we even start the test. Um, so we take measures like that to make sure in shipping with pressure and temperature change that your sample is still viable and we're going to get an accurate reading. Um, so with the urine sample from that little single tube, we do over 50 amino acids. We look at 6 or 7 different pathways. I'd have to count them out. We do the catecholamine pathway, which is also where your body makes adrenaline, the dopamine to adrenaline cycle, and then how it's broken down. So we look at the adrenal activity of how well your body is producing energy, but then once it's made, if it has a nice flow getting metabolized out or detoxed out. Some clients that have anxiety, brain fog, cognitive issues might have a block where they're producing good amounts of epinephrine, but once it's made, they struggle to get rid of it. That can result in feeling, we call that negative energy, result in feeling what we call wired but tired. It's like you're pushing on the
you.
gas and the brakes at the same time.
Hmm.
So we look at that full pathway, and that pathway is pretty important. It gives us markers regarding MTHFR gene function. We call that your methylation status, where B12 and folate play a part. Um, then we look at the serotonin pathway, tryptophan to serotonin to melatonin. We look at your GABA glutamate pathway, which is a huge pathway relating not only to the brain, but has some association with gut function, whatnot. We look at methylation process of methionine, homocysteine. We look at sulfuration, which is how you detox, where glutathione is made in your liver. Those are inflammatory markers, your immune system. And then to kind of complement that, we look at the histamine pathway. And when I say pathway, I'm talking the whole deal from how things get made, certain amino acids that build, and then break it down, clear it out, out,
Mhm.
out. So
Mhm.
it's a whole process, not just single things, but it's a family. And so it's a very detailed panel. And from that, we get a good grasp on what is the state of your nervous system as a whole.
Mhm.
Mhm. And that's where the genetics tie in. That's the genes are what determine how those amino acids move, how they're broken down and then metabolized.
Yeah. It's brilliant, and I think any doctor or practitioner really understands all of what you just spoke, because
Yeah,
it's really the
sorry
key
if
to
that was all technical.
biochemistry, and we're like the only lab in town who are doing it
Well, and I'll tell you,
this
a lot
way.
of people, yeah, and the genes, the genetic testing is very popular right now. A lot of people know MTHFR, MAO,
Right.
COMT, right? There's some big ones. I would say that it would be unkind to yourself to supplement or take a product just off the genetic results and not do an amino acid NT test and not really know how those genes are functioning in the pathway. Just
Mm-hmm.
because you have a genetic mutation or a SNP that was found in a lab test does not always mean it's presenting as a problem. And if it is, you really need to know to what degree is it a problem for you? Because just like we started, we're all unique. Your profile is not the same as my profile. Your
Mm-hmm.
vitamin should not be the same as my vitamin. So you've really got to know the little nuances of how it's manifesting in your system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is essential and lifelong.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've been with you for 20 years personally, and have several clients as well who have been with us for years and years. And it's key because there's really no place else to go.
I
Uh,
don't know of any other company. I use
no,
these products myself,
yeah.
and I don't want to go a day without them. And really, the more you do the test, it really only takes, I'd say, maybe two or three. You start mentally, physically cueing in on what that feels like, what low cortisol feels like, what your body signals are to that, what low serotonin might be like for you.
Hmm.
Then that helps you cue in on you might need to retest sooner. Or you might say, hey, I'm doing really good. I'm just going to wait another month or two. I can push it back because you learn your body signals, your rhythms. And that's the beauty of what I love about this is we're really helping you integrate with you, that personal integration.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think it's key to any longevity or anti-aging program that they have this level of specificity and understanding and customization.
Yeah,
So that they get, everybody wants to live long and well and have a deep health span, but without the proper nutrients and without really understanding, like you said, and you can't really take care of yourself at the same level. So we're talking about long-term health
yeah.
care,
How
real
to,
health care,
yeah,
not waiting until you break down and have a named disease that you're fighting against. So this is a wonderful program for those that are into the whole body hacking movement and really wanting to be preventative and lifestyle oriented versus wait until you get so sick that you have a named
yeah.
disease.
It's interesting you say that. Um, we wrote a research document about the 5 stages of adrenal depletion, what goes on with adrenal hormones. There's a pattern that we follow. And the initial stage of stress response, when your body has entered a form of fight flight, is all hormones become really high. Everything is produced in excess.
Mm.
And most people feel pretty good at that stage. You're, yeah, things are stressful, stuff's going on, but you're coping. You wouldn't even think about testing. this is the ideal time to test what your levels are, because like I said, there's 5 stages. Well, what's after one is number 2. The second
Mhm.
stage is where you can no longer maintain this high production and numbers begin to drop. And as they drop, the alarm signals go off, your body compensates and shoots up and you have these erratic patterns that go on where your body overcompensates. And that's really where you feel that roller coaster of energy fluctuation throughout the day, or mood, cognitive, just fluctuation in general throughout the day. Don't wait till you're there, right? Let's go back to maintenance, maintenance, maintenance. Test, don't guess. Just get a sense of yourself. What's
Yeah,
my current status? How am I doing?
yeah. When would you recommend a woman to do that baseline testing? At what age?
That's a really good question. To be honest, I think if you have an in tune, aware family, mom and dad, I would say to start it during puberty.
Mm.
Let's see, as those hormones are going, like I said, just sets them up for a smoother transition to adulthood. If not then, probably between 25 and 30. You
Yeah,
really settle into maturity somewhere in that window. Um, and I think, like I said in a previous video, you prepare for each decade, the one prior. So let's set ourselves up good for our 30s, because after 30, it's all maintenance. Let's do that in the mid 20s. 25, I think, ideal time. And then you can get yourself a routine, a plan, and you are golden.
yeah, yeah. I think so many women would be moved to have their daughters tested at the beginning of menses, because
Yeah,
those first few years are really, a challenge for most families.
and it
And,
shouldn't be.
and
It
they don't need to be
doesn't have
exactly.
to be. And what if you can make a really fun thing? It's a birthday present. Congratulations, you started your period, and you're going to get this really cool lab test, and you're going to know yourself better than anyone does.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that truly is preventive medicine at
Yeah,
its best,
yeah,
to start young and, like you said, and really maintain that sense of balance through each decade of life.
yeah, yeah.
Not wait until I had someone call me yesterday and say, I've got a friend, she's 89 years old, can we test her? And I said, sure, we definitely can. However, where you are at 89, if you're just starting to customize nutrition, it'd be probably better to do at 29 or at 18,
Yeah,
so
would be
I,
better, but never too late.
never too late. And that's my motto for Regeneration Health is it's never too late to
No.
regenerate.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and it definitely is better through science. And our collaboration is really a gift and a blessing to me and to our companies and really to the world, because we're just at the point that people are so confused what to do, and with all the mental health conditions and all of the hormonal imbalances and all the
All stress.
environmental toxins,
Yeah,
they don't know where to begin. So
stress
I
and
say
tox.
begin here and
Yeah.
do your HP4 test kit, and then we know where to begin, and we begin to really learn what is for our highest and best use. It's a great investment.
Yep, 100%.
Well, thank you for your time
You
today. It
are
was
so welcome.
really wonderful. It always is. I look forward to our talk next week,
Oh,
and you have a wonderful week, Janine.
thank
Much love.
Much love. Thank you.